Welcome. Thanks for having us. So I think the last time the three of us were at an event together was in March at the Crypto Summit at the White House. And I think, Tyler, you mentioned that a year before that, you thought it was much more likely that you'd be in the jailhouse than the White House. That's where crypto was back then.
This is true.
That was the line of the summit, by the way. And I think the president appreciated that because he similarly was facing lawfare a year ago when his political enemies were trying to put him in prison for 700 years. And so I think he really understood the plight of the crypto community because they were being subjected to the same kind of unfair persecution that he was.
Well said. Yeah, I think a year ago, this time of year, I think the president was still a candidate. He was engulfed in lawfare. Biden was apparently sharp as a tack. J.D. Vance was still a senator. And then something really remarkable happened.
And obviously the war on crypto, and we can go into the details, but Operation Choke Point 2.0, how many bank accounts did we lose?
How many what?
Bank accounts did we lose?
Oh, we lost, we were losing a bank account every other week in the year of 2023, and we were down to literally our last bank account for wires and last bank account for ACH. And if we had lost either one of those, it would have been game over. So that's how close Pocahontas got to taking us out.
But, okay, so I think it's really important to go back in time a year because it's hard to imagine it's easy to forget how bleak it was. There's the war on crypto, there's Operation Choke Point, there's all this stuff happening. But then one thing happened, two things really, but one thing. You and Chamath courageously hosted a dinner for President Trump at your house in San Francisco, in the heart of enemy territory. And I think that really started a preference cascade in Silicon Valley.
So David, what did you think about that event?
Yeah, this was June 6th of last year. I remember that date because that happens to be D-Day, and it felt like this was kind of a big event in San Francisco. It was right on the heels of that whole sham trial that they put the president through, where, I don't know if you guys remember this, it feels like so long ago, but the Democrats tried to brand President Trump with that whole convicted felon label as the way they were going to try and win the election. And he had to spend a couple of months kind of locked up in this courtroom in this sham for the past couple of months. And so in any event, he on the heels of that, he came out to California and to do our event, and then he went to LA and did a couple other events. And no one knew exactly how he would be received, especially in liberal San Francisco. And for the week before the event, the media in San Francisco had tried to gin up protesters to show up. But all along the motorcade, when the president, came to, eventually arrive at my house, there were demonstrators all along the side of the road, but they weren't anti-Trump. They were all pro-Trump.
Yes,
and
it's true.
Thousands of them. And the first thing the president said when he got out of his car was, "Am I in the right city?"
Right.
And we knew right away that there was some huge vibe shift going on because all the energy was pro-Trump, even though, the Democrats had tried to do this whole, convicted felon hoax. So right then, we knew something was changing.
Yes, definitely. And then I think that your dinner was in June, and then President Trump keynoted this conference a month later, last summer in Nashville. And I just remember I was in the audience for that.
Wait, before we get to that, can I tell a funny story about at the dinner?
Please.
So the president, he's hilarious, as you guys experienced, and so he basically did a speech at our house. We had about 100 people there, and it was kind of like having a Trump rally in your living room, and he would go up there and he would just talk to us. And he would pick people out of the crowd and just start, saying things. And For some reason, he took a shine to Tyler and Cameron right away because he picked you guys out. And he said, as I recall, something like, I know you guys really created Facebook. I know it was really you guys who did that. And yeah, I know you didn't win that court case, but it's okay because you guys got dealt a lot of cards. You're very rich, very handsome. You got dealt a lot of cards.
Supermodels with big brains, right?
I said to I said to you guys, so do you know President Trump? And you said no. That was like the first time you had met him. So amazingly, he just picked you guys out, and he knew all this stuff and just started riffing. So in any event,
yeah, and that was, I think that was his like 5th event that day, and he had started at like 5 in the morning in Florida, and by the time he got to SF, that was, I think, he had probably already had a very long day. And I remember, he just kept going. He would have stayed all night probably if his staff hadn't said to leave, which is so different and so authentic than other politicians who sort of come in, mail it in, get the money and go. And Trump really engaged and he really listened. And I have to hand it to the media because they did a really good job. You meet the guy in person and you're like, I knew it was BS that the media was attacking him, but still, like, this guy is so different than the person that is portrayed out there, and the diff was massive.
Yeah, no, it's true. His work ethic is just incredible. I think that day he had woken up at must have been like 3 a.m. our time in Florida, done a bunch of meetings there, then flown to Arizona. He did a rally in Arizona earlier that day, then flew to our place in San Francisco, and then after our event, he flew down to LA for another event that he had the next day, and he could have left. He stayed 2 hours longer than he had to. He really spent the time with everyone. It was really incredible, and he was very interested in what everyone had to say. And I would say that probably a third of the people at that dinner were folks in the Bitcoin or crypto community. And I think it was maybe one of the first times that he had heard this message about how unfairly that all the crypto people were being treated by the Gensler SEC. And I think it definitely registered with him. And then, a month later, he ended up speaking at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. So I think this was all part of the process of him just listening and understanding the concerns of the community, how unfairly they're being treated. And like I said, I think it really resonated with him because he had also been subjected to all this lawfare.
Yeah, and so when he came to the conference in last summer, and I was in the audience, and the energy in the room was just tremendous. People were so excited, but the line that got the biggest rise was when he said, "I'm going to fire Gary Gensler." And
it's getting a good rise today.
And it was such a good line that he ended up saying it again, and the crowd erupted more, and so he did fire Gary Gensler, and so I think one of the big themes is promises made, promises kept, and you're part of that, David. So big thank you to David, who's the crypto AI czar with this administration. So it'd be great to hear sort of what you've been up to, and I feel like this administration is moving at the speed of a startup, which is something that you know a lot about, but it's moving at breakneck speed. It came in with a plan, with promises. And by the way, the other big point from last summer was free Ross. Yes. And
definitely a huge campaign promise. So, we just had the first 100 days in the administration, and it's just incredible how much the president's gotten done just in the area of crypto. It's really amazing. I never do this, but there was so much that's happened in the last 100 days. I have to pull out my cheat sheet. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, how much time do we have? Because this
let me,
might take a little while.
Let me just highlight a few of the most important things. So first of all, you're right that on the president's first full day in office, he pardoned Ross Ulbricht. So that was 2 days later, he signed a week one executive order to promote U.S. leadership in digital assets. That EO prohibited CBDCs. It ordered the end of Operation Choke Point 2.0, and it created our President's Working Group on Digital Assets that I'll get to in a second. In March, he established the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, which treats Bitcoin as a reserve asset of the United States for the first time. And then we also hosted the first Digital Assets Summit at the White House, which is the first time that digital assets or crypto has been treated in that way as an industry that's arrived. There's also been a ton of work that's been done on the sort of agency rulemaking side. The president rescinded the IRS's DeFi broker rule. We rescinded SAB 121, which effectively prevented banks from getting into custody of Bitcoin. The DOJ ended its regulation by prosecution approach, which ended these aggressive legal actions against digital asset firms without telling them what the rules are. I mean, we had this approach under Gensler where he would say, well, just come in and talk to us. I heard all these stories from crypto founders that they were told, well, just come in and talk to us. And then there'd be someone from the enforcement division in these meetings writing down everything they'd say. And then the next day they would get a Wells notice and the prosecution would start us. Well, who would want to, people learned very quickly not to go in and talk to the SEC. So the DOJ has ended that. The SEC has established a crypto task force to provide regulatory clarity. Hester Peirce has done an amazing job with this. The Federal Reserve Board, the OCC, and FDIC have all issued favorable guidance for banks to engage in crypto-related activities, which I think is a very important step to further mainstreaming crypto adoption. And then my personal favorite is that the administration defunded the CFPB, which is Elizabeth Warren's personal regulatory agency. This was her personal goon squad to terrorize crypto companies, and that got defunded. So that's just a small sample of what's been accomplished in just the first 100 days. It's pretty incredible. And then, you heard from Senator Haggerty a minute ago what's happening on Capitol Hill. There's the stablecoin bill's about to pass, the Genius Act, and then I don't think that's going to be the end of it. I think on the heels of that, there's also a market structure bill that's coming that I think will also likely pass before August. And the point of the market structure bill is to enshrine all of the new rules that we've put in place into law so that a future Gary Gensler can't just unwind everything that we've done.
I mean, yeah, that's a tremendous list, and that's definitely larger than the amount of promises that were made. So it's promises kept, and then some.
There have been a couple of times where, in rooting out all of these insidious rules that were created over the last 4 years, some of them, we've received some serious pushback, and occasionally it's had to go all the way up to the president. And what the president always says is we have to keep our promises. I mean, it really is a point of honor that he made these promises at the Bitcoin conference last year, and he has kept all of his promises. That is very important to him.
Yeah, the other thing is that strikes me is that we always want startups coming out of dorm rooms, not the boardroom of a law firm. And that's been the state of play in crypto, in our industry, in Bitcoin for the better part of the last decade. I mean, we feel like we've been building into a headwind for a decade, and now finally we're building with a bit of a tailwind. And what does that look like? And I always view the Bitcoin price as a proxy for how early it is. And I think we think that Bitcoin is obviously orange is the new gold. So Bitcoin is gold 2.0. And that's been true since day one. And so at $100,000 Bitcoin, that's exciting. But if you take 21 million into the above ground market price of gold, really it should be $1 million a coin easily, and then some. So we often talk about baseball games as being sort of the metric for how early things are, and we're literally in the first inning. And let me tell you, this game's going to overtime. So buckle up.
Well, I don't want to measure, what we accomplish exactly through price levels. I guess I want to measure it through innovation levels. But I will say that I did notice that Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high the other day, and that was great to see.
Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence.
It's not, yes. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we see that blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, this is the financial system of the future. And we want this innovation happening in the United States. We don't want it driven offshore. That's basically what was happening before, is because under the Biden administration, and as we all know, Elizabeth Warren had the auto pen, all this innovation was being driven offshore. It was being driven to other countries. And that's not the American way. I mean, the American way is always to be the innovator, the leader in technology. And we want this financial revolution happening in the United States. We want to be leading in this. We don't want to be driving it offshore. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think the U.S. capital markets are the most vibrant, deep, liquid markets on the planet, and a lot of that, the stage for that was set 100 years ago when securities laws were first passed in 34, and I think we have this opportunity now to set for the next century laws that enshrine the right to self-custody, peer-to-peer transactions. Not that long ago, in 1933, FDR passed an executive order that confiscated gold. You actually couldn't hoard gold or hodl it, in our parlance, and you actually had to turn it in. And that was less than 100 years ago. So really, I think we're on the cusp of enshrining these human rights, this right to property rights, digital property rights in Bitcoin. And I'm very excited. And I think the work that you are doing and this administration's doing is setting up that next century of innovation. So again, definitely very grateful for all that work that you've done, David, there.
Well, I've noticed a number of states are acting on the Bitcoin Bill of Rights, and I think it would be good for the federal government to do something as well. And I think we can incorporate those concepts, the right to self-custody, the right to financial freedom in the what's called the market structure bill. So I hope we can do that.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, and
Is there any, I'm curious to ask you guys, like, is there anything else that you guys think we should be doing? I mean, I'm kind of worried that as cryptos are, by the way, I never expected to be in government at all. I mean, I'm, like you guys, I hosted that dinner for the president of June of last year, and I never could have predicted that it would end up with, me taking a role in government and being on the stage with you guys here now. But I guess, things, we've been moving so fast to, correct all these things, in terms of the legislation that's moving on Capitol Hill, in terms of rooting out all of the regulations, the agencies and departments. I think by August, we might have achieved like the crypto agenda in Washington, I think. I mean, what else are we missing? Like, what else should we be doing next? What would you guys like to see? What else is on your wish list? I'm curious here what else do you guys would like to see?
Do you want to go first, Tyler? Or?
Something about capital gains tax. No. I think it'd be great if the U.S. government started proactively acquiring Bitcoin.
What do you guys think about that?
That's about as big a rise as fire Gary Gensler getting last summer.
So the executive order establishing the strategic Bitcoin reserve does allow the government to purchase more if it can be done in a budget neutral way. So specifically, if either the Commerce Department or the Treasury Department can figure out how to fund it without adding to the debt, then they are allowed to create those programs. So if we can convince Howard Lutnick, who's the Commerce Secretary, or Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, to buy some, and they can figure out how to fund it, without a new tax or without adding to the debt, then maybe find the money from some other program that's not using it, then we could potentially acquire more Bitcoin.
Wow, love it. That sounds.
So I can't promise anything, but there is a pathway to doing that, and the question is just, can we get either the Treasury Department or the Commerce Department to get excited about that? Because if they do, and they can figure out how to fund it, they actually do have presidential authorization already.
Cool. So how should we get their attention to do that?
Can you guys get their attention?
Raise your hands if you want the U.S. government to start acquiring Bitcoin. All right.
Do you think we should put the tariff money to buy Bitcoin? I think I heard from somebody. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
buy the dip.
I have Bitcoin with the tariff money. Cool.
So what do you think so one of the things, David, I think also is the AI crossover with Bitcoin and I think talking about building like financial infrastructure in the US and how that's an issue of national security and innovation. And Bitcoin mining, for example, the GPUs, those are the same chips that power AI. And I think it's really cool that they're all sort of meeting together. And how do you think about like the next 100 days or the next couple of years?
Well, definitely one of the common denominators between AI and crypto or Bitcoin is that you do need energy. You need power. You need electricity. I mean, you need electricity to power GPUs for for AI data centers, and you need it for Bitcoin ASICs to generate hash power. So this is something that we definitely need to do more of in the United States. We need a lot more power to basically fuel this future of AI and crypto. And I think the president definitely got us off on the right foot by, with drill, baby, drill. He definitely wants to unleash oil and gas production in the U.S. So that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Also making it a lot easier to permit new energy production, new pipelines, and then also permitting the creation of new data centers. I think we want most of the new, let's call it AI compute, and most of the new hash power to be in the U.S. if we can. I mean, it would be nice for there to be more hash power in the United States, just like we want there to be a lot more, AI data centers. So I think, we're going to try and make it a lot easier to again, like build. Beyond drill, baby, drill, we need to build, baby, build, and it just needs to be a lot easier in the United States.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like energy is so important for the growth of these technologies. And in the last Bitcoin cycle, there was people sort of talking about the energy consumption and carbon footprint of Bitcoin mining, which is pretty silly because it was still a fraction of the traditional financial system and the internet. And I think one of the things we probably want to watch out for is people trying to use ESG to try and attack Bitcoin from that vector and just call it out and make sure we don't get Greta pilled over here and deindustrialize.
Yeah, and I just got back from a trip to the Middle East with the president, and he did something like $3 trillion of new deals with the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. And I think the president's been very focused on getting net new investment in the United States, including for data centers. Also helping the American technology stack spread internationally and become the standard. So for example, we just did a deal in the UAE where they're going to be building a huge campus for American AI companies, cloud service providers, hyperscalers to build new data centers, and then they're going to make a matching investment in the United States in the build out of data centers. So this is the kind of stuff that the president's looking at. He wants to encourage investment in the U.S. He wants to encourage the build out of data centers. He wants to encourage new energy sources. And just generally, he's on the side of innovation and the future. Whereas if you look at the Biden administration, they were really doing everything they could to stop all of those things. I mean, you had the Gensler SEC, you had all the restrictions on oil and gas. They were even alienating our Gulf state allies who want to invest in America and they want to be on the American tech stack. And the Biden administration was doing everything they could to limit the export of American technology, forcing those countries to potentially choose Huawei. It just didn't make any sense at all. So I feel like what we have in Washington right now is just a sea change. It's just a total comprehensive shift from being anti-innovation to being pro-innovation and being much more future-oriented and getting all the obstacles out of the way and helping the private sector innovate. And it's really just been incredible. It's been really fun to be part of. Like I said, I never anticipated that I'd be part of this administration. I'm just a guy from Silicon Valley who hosted a dinner, and then the next thing you know, I'm helping to drive this agenda in Washington. But I think that it's been really incredible to be part of and see the whole thing take shape.
Yeah, well said.
awesome.
Thank you, David. It's hard to imagine a president, any other president, being able to do a fraction of this or accomplish that, or any administration. And we're just over 100 days, so it's pretty amazing that we still have a lot of time left.
No, it's incredible. I mean, we're basically 4 months in, so we still have over 3.5 years. So I think just what we can accomplish over the next few years is going to be really incredible. What all of you guys are going to accomplish with Bitcoin is going to be incredible, and to the moon, right?
To the moon.
Right. Well said.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.